we were created for escapism. We're just escaping to the wrong place.
Wow. Can you break that down?
Yes.
You made it to the new year. We made it to the new year. I am happy for you, and I pray that your dreams come true. I pray that you live in the light that God has called you to. Great things will happen to and for you in this new year. Together, we are going to be achieving a lot of great things. I'm starting with the hottest and spiciest topic no man wants to talk about, and that's men's mental health. You are listening to the Major Pane Podcast, the only podcast crafted to guide men like you on unraveling your uniqueness to transform the world around you. If you are a lady joining us, feel comfortable to listen as we hope women learn how to build better men through the golden nugget we will be sharing and learning. Today, joining me to talk about men's mental health is Joel David Witton, the co-founder and speaker at Inspiration Republic, an education and media company that speaks in schools across Canada on a variety of important topics. Joel is a proud uncle of 10. Oh, wow. And his purpose is to inspire destiny. Welcome, Joel.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good to be here with you all.
Awesome. Thank you for answering the call. I really appreciate men who come on this call, who make themselves available to give impact to the world. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, for sure. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. I know your story comes with a lot of resilience in this topic of mental health. While you were growing up, I know you went through a lot of things and all those things, which of course, we really want to hear. What were those things and how were you able to, overcome them?
Yeah. Okay. So for myself, I grew up in a family of 6, one older brother, 2 younger sisters, both parents in the household. We were a tight-knit family, type of family that would, have dinner together most nights. My mom would drive me to soccer practices and swimming lessons and, ski lessons on the weekends in the winter and, the Canadian thing. And, and although, my parents even decided to really try and manage on one income and how my dad worked so that my mom could stay home and raise us. So I'm used to having both my parents around, very solid family unit, grew up involved in sports, was quite successful in sports. So, played rep soccer at a high level, was on the best team in Ontario for a number of years for soccer, and then transferred to basketball and was a star basketball player in high school and so on. And good student on top of that, well-liked, popular. So in terms of, stereotypes that might be related to mental health, none of them really matched my scenario. I was popular, I was a good athlete, a good student, so on and so forth. Came from a great family. But around the age of, I think it was around 8 years old, I started to have some mental health issues that surfaced. And they surfaced in the form of symptoms of schizophrenia. Was one thing. So when I was by myself, sometimes I'd start to hear, as a little 8-year-old, I'd start to hear echoes, almost like Joel, like this really creepy stuff, sort of tripping out my brain. Start to have pervasive dark thoughts that I didn't know why I was having them or why they're coming to my mind. I remember one instance where I was having this pervasive thought coming to my mind that my mom's a witch. And I was like, as an 8-year-old, I felt so horrified that I'd even think this thought. I didn't know where it came from, but I felt horrified by that thought, right? And then started to struggle with OCD around the same time, where my mom would give me a task to do, like vacuum a small room, and it would just take me forever to vacuum it because I never felt like it was quite clean. I felt like I missed a spot. So I'd be vacuuming. I just get so frustrated because I felt like it was never good enough. Or I'd go to wash my hands sometimes, and I just felt like I had to wash them again, or they weren't quite clean. I didn't do a good enough job. So I literally washed the oils right on my hands to the point where my knuckles would bleed at times, I remember. And, I was dealing with all these different things around that time. And obviously this caused a lot of anxiety. So it was interesting because we're talking about a lot of exterior factors that cause mental health issues for men. But there's also just sometimes breakdowns in our mental health that we can't necessarily pinpoint. Sometimes they might be spiritually related. There can be a genetic component or an a generational component. I know my natural dad had schizophrenia. So we've sort of looked at trying to pinpoint how or why some of the stuff comes. And sometimes you can't necessarily fully pinpoint it, but nonetheless, at 8 years old, I started to deal with these feelings. I started to deal with feelings of, at times, feeling just guilty for every little thing. Like if I said something, I would feel like, I said that in a rude way, or maybe I had a attitude in my mind, but I didn't really have an attitude. So I felt like I had to apologize for all this stuff. It just made for really awkward interactions where I'd be apologizing and people didn't know why I was apologizing, but I had to do it to relieve myself of this feeling of I did something wrong. So I have to apologize for it. And, these things growing up, it almost felt like they'd go through different seasons where I'd be dealing with them, and then they'd go away, and then they came back at different points through my growing up years. I dealt with starting at 8 up through my teen years. And then there's been times where I've sort of had certain relapses or dealt with stuff even into my adult years as well. Some of the stuff that I've been through, especially in my young years, I used to say I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, just in terms of, it's one thing when the pressure's on the outside or the battle's outside of you, but when inside of you, you can't go anywhere. You can't get away from it. And, some of those fears or doubts that you'll never ever be able to live a normal life. If people really knew what you were going through, they think you're crazy or they wouldn't understand you. And so a feeling of isolation and loneliness that comes with that in terms of feeling on your own. And, that's really a bunch of the stuff that I personally dealt with growing up. So I love to say, like, I share that with students in schools, and I love to say, so one of the first things I want to let you know is there is hope, because I'm here today and I'm telling you there's hope. And if I went through what I went through and I came up the other side and found some answers to help me get there, then that means there's hope for you as well.
Wow. Thank you so much, Joel, for sharing this. And speaking of the answers, like how were you able to navigate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, when I had those thoughts, I had relationship with my mom and my dad, and it really tried to sever that relationship and isolate me, because I obviously did not want my mom to know that these thoughts were coming to my mind. As a little 8-year-old, I'd have images of how horrified she'd be when she found out I was thinking these thoughts about her. But because I had that closeness of relationship, and just, I think the weight was too heavy, I just felt I had to tell her. And but I also felt the security in terms of the relationship that I had. And so I ended up telling her, and of course she wasn't horrified. She was in my corner right away, and really just concerned about my about why these thoughts were coming. Not that I had them, but obviously saw it from a parental point of view and a loving point of view. And because of that, from that point forward, my parents were aware, and I felt comfortable. I felt like it was a safe place. And I think that's one of the first things to note is, if you're dealing, especially when we're talking to men, if you're dealing with a mental health issue, don't walk your journey alone.
Wow.
Don't feel like you have to bear the burden yourself. Don't try and just carry that load on your own. We weren't designed to carry that load on our own. And you don't have to, and more than you don't have to, you can't afford to.
Yeah.
You can't afford to. That the damage and the potential dangers of trying to do that are just too great.
Yeah, that's so true. That's very true. Because I know they also say that men, we are social beings for sure. That's both men and women social, but men kind of have the sense of community. Like there's this sense of strength you get when you're working with a fellow brother on a particular journey. Like I have friends who, if I'm down, I know maybe my wife might not understand, but once I pick up the phone and, just have that conversation with them, I feel so good because they understand me, they are fellow men. And there's just something, especially if that friendship is, say, a good friendship, and to me, I would say if they are also a Christian, it helps because
absolutely
they can now see things from, that biblical principle, biblical lens, and pray for you, share you that word of encouragement and stuff. And I know some men might also be reaching out to specific people for help, and maybe they are not giving them that attention, or they are not listening to them. Also, they might not just be in the best place to support this man, which now brings me to you made mention about your mom supporting you. You said you opened up to her and she made you feel secure. She didn't rebuke you, which I believe that's another reason why many men don't even want to go to the other gender, which is a woman, be it their sister, their mother, or even their wife, to talk about these things. I just want to ask, how do you think women can best support men who are having mental health issues?
I think that's definitely one of the keys. If I use my mom as an example, is creating a safe, judgment-free zone. I mean, women are by nature excellent listeners. A lot of times, as men, often a complaint you'll hear from women is that we may not always be the best communicators, but then also when they want to share, they aren't necessarily always looking for us to come up with an answer. Mm-hmm. And so when men try to just answer, they're missing the fact that the woman first wants to just share her heart and be heard.
Yeah.
And I think, what women tend to be very good at that. And I think that does more than they know sometimes. I think in terms of just being that safe, judgment-free, listening ear of allowing the man to be heard. I think beyond that, encouraging and helping make time for those relationships that you were speaking of, in terms of encouraging and the men in your life to get involved in healthy communities of men. And I like what you said about that too, because I think a lot of men struggle with just because we haven't necessarily been trained in our families or in society to open up well.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of women can just sit down and just start sharing their heart. Men often can't do that.
Exactly.
But what you mentioned is in working with men. And I think it's in terms of, if you look at some of the strongest relationships among men, it's in team, it's being in the foxhole together, so to speak. You look at the army example of those brothers who fought together. You look at even as going on a trip together or something of that nature, where you're accomplishing something, you're taking on that challenge together, you get into those environments, or you're working on building something, you're serving the community together. Sometimes these can be good outlets where a man may not feel that comfortable sharing his emotion, but he can find a place where he can make himself useful alongside of other men. And that can be a comfortable way to dip your feet into the toes of that community, and sort of get involved, and then have the opportunities to open up. It's a lot easier to open up in those settings once you have a shared experience or have taken on a challenge together with other men. I think that those are great opportunities, but just encouraging that as women, being that listening ear, create, again, in encouraging those relationships, helping, trying to facilitate, to make time, say it is a husband and wife and you have kids, just looking to encourage and make time for that. And, you can't, and then I think the other aspect is and the biggest one is learn how to pray for them well.
Wow.
The best fighting you'll ever do for your husband or for the men in your life is on your knees. And there's a great movie that actually had a book that it provided called War Room. And did you see that movie?
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And again, great example. But the more we understand as individuals, the power of prayer and how much you can fight for someone behind the scenes, and how much of a tangible difference, like you're never a helpless bystander when it comes to a loved one in your life. But sometimes if we don't understand the power of that, of being in the background and letting Holy Spirit take them on a journey, and trusting God to take them on a journey, trusting God that he is Jehovah Shalom, that he's going to provide peace and he's going to take care of your loved ones, then we can try in our own strength, so one of the huge aspects of depression is a lack of motivation, right?
Yeah. And
you feel like you don't want to do anything. But if a man's dealing with that, he may not be able to express that, but you just see there can be situations where his wife might, or the woman in his life might get frustrated with his lack of motivation, his lack of get up and go, his lack of vision, so to speak, when he's just being crushed under the weight of the world.
Exactly.
And sometimes when we don't understand the power of just love and encouragement, but then prayer behind the scenes, vent your frustration through fighting for them rather than fighting them,
exactly. Yeah.
and I think sometimes that it can surface sometimes in a frustration on and a nagging almost, which can really be further depressing or further discouraging. And you look at that word discouraging, and it's discouraged, to take away courage.
Wow.
Men need encouragement. They don't need discouragement, and especially women that are close to you have a stronger ability to give or take away courage than most anybody else in your lives, or in their lives. And so that can be a huge aspect. And again, the balance to me in that is when you start to learn that you can fight for them without necessarily having to be the one to speak to them all the time.
Yeah.
That you don't have to take that responsibility. Then you can have that sense of, hey, I'm fighting for them because I know how to pray and I'm praying for them. And then it releases an opportunity just to love them where they're at. Person, because that God's taking care of things behind the scenes.
Wow. Oh my God, Joe. Woohoo. Man. Wow. I think you just solved the word problem. Honestly, for real, you just solved the word problem, because I feel like a lot of women do not understand the huge role they play in a man's life. And you just dissecting that role that honestly is beyond what the whole social movement is saying that men are saying women are doing. Their whole argument about men say a woman's job is to just take care of the family, cook, have babies and all that. And that's not true, because God created Eve for a specific reason. You understand? He saw that Adam was alone. Adam needed support. He needed an assistant. And which makes me understand that this life, when it comes to especially man and woman relationship, albeit whether marriage or friendship, there's a huge role both parties play in working together to support each other, to be the best version of themselves, to build themselves up. And that's one thing we are encouraging women to, they should start understanding how important their role is in a man's life.
Yes.
and to stand up and take up this challenge, because in as much as a lot of men are scared of speaking up, a lot of women are scared of asking questions. They are scared of showing up for this man. They don't know how. And I get it, they might not know how, but that's where that conversation comes in. How can I support you? What do you need me to do? What do you think is the issue? And I noticed, because I've been practicing this in my own relationship, and it really works. It works. It's as simple as just having that heart-to-heart conversation and having this, like that whole aspect of impatient, like some women just being so impatient to understand what's happening to their men, because they're just selfish. It's just all about me, all about me. I want you to meet my needs. I want you to meet my wants, but they don't understand that the other person is a fellow human being himself, who is not just a rock that you pour all your problems on. Because of course, even the therapist, sometimes I ask, you see social workers and therapists, I ask them, I say, so if I'm to be the therapist today, I'm like, who is your therapist? Because you absorbing people's problems. So as a man too, that's it. We absorbing our family's problem, the world problem, societal problem. Now, how do we get to release those things? Who is going to coach us? You understand, right? And speaking about now that vulnerable part, that healthy, vulnerable part of being a man, because a man is a human, and a man has to be vulnerable to speak out for things to move forward. This is really profound. Lovely insight, Joel. Thank you so much for that.
I mean, just one thing about what you were mentioning too is when you talked about God created Eve for Adam, and he said that man needs a help meet, right? Go back to the original language on that word. The only other person he used that word for in relationship to man was himself, was Holy Spirit. And it's like, so the role that a woman plays, it wasn't a helper, it was a help meet. It was that, like, it's so much more significant than just a secondary or a helper for his vision, but it's actually the person to come and to help bring that thing to life, wow. And the other aspect was, when it comes to communication, especially for men, it's not a skill that we often come by naturally. It's often looked down upon, as you said, when it comes to men, in terms of the way that we've been socialized, but it's a skill, and it's a skill that can be developed. And it's healthy processing of your emotions makes it so that you don't get constipated in your emotions and toxic within. And like a great course that I've taken, that I know my pastor, who's my brother, had put me onto, which is great for relationships, but it's also great for individuals, just as a skill on your tool belt of life for communicating and processing, understanding, staying sensitive to and processing emotions, is this really cool course that people can get involved with virtually, actually, called Connection Codes.
Oh, Connection Codes. I would get the code from you. I'll get the link from you.
Yes. They got a handle on Instagram, and people can connect in there. But yeah, definitely in terms of developing that skill, whether as a couple or as individuals. And that's another part. So obviously, one, having people in your corner is huge, was huge for me in my mental health. Learning how to process emotions in a healthy way, and learning how to share and be vulnerable, be transparent, be open to, in processing. You release the weight of that from just carrying or just going over and over in your head. And when you share it with someone else, it's so interesting how God's designed us, because when you get to be there for someone else on an emotional level, it actually, if you're always taking in, like you said, you absorb it, but we're actually created to be there for each other. It actually, on a healthy level, it brings life to somebody when someone lets them in to help carry their load. So on one hand, the person who's dealing with the load, it lightens their load. And then on the other hand, the person who they let in, it builds a greater level of intimacy between those two people because, hey, they let me in. They let me into what's going on.
Yes.
They let me share their load. And now there's the camaraderie of, hey, I'm here with you. And so it takes the relationship deeper and it lightens the load. So it's just a win-win-win.
Exactly.
You know? Whereas when you keep that person out, especially in the context of a relationship with a significant other, then they feel that isolation. They feel like you're not letting them in.
Yeah.
And you're carrying the load alone. So that's a lose-lose. You know,
exactly.
So we want win-wins. We don't want lose-lose.
That's true. I love that vivid description you just gave right now. Yes, that's how we win. That's how we are designed, and that's the way we have to move forward, especially in this new year. So if you are listening, if you feel like you enjoy holding back, you don't like reaching out to people, or people are reaching out to you and you prevented them from reaching out to you, you are causing a lot of problem, not just for you, but for the society at large. So we have to learn how to be reasonably vulnerable this year and also reach out to people. That's what we need the most right now, especially now in 2022.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a few more questions here. And so you said your brother is a pastor, and that makes me so excited because I'm in your church for sure. Toronto City Church. Woohoo! Oh, wow. Awesome. So I want to ask you, how has your Christian faith impacted your mental health?
Huge. I mean, it's important for all of us to not walk your journey alone. It's important that we learn to process emotions, but some of the stuff we're dealing with, you know, we don't have answers for as human beings. You know, the further you get into, if you get into the mental health field, you start to realize more and more psychologists don't have answers for a lot of stuff. There's a lot of labels and there's not a lot of answers.
Wow.
You know, and they do the best they can, but a lot of times in a non spiritual environment, they don't even recognize the reality of the spiritual realm, that we are a triune being. We are a spirit. We have a soul, being your mind, your will, and your emotions. And we live in a body. And if you don't acknowledge the spirit, then you're kind of flying blind in terms of coming to a full holistic approach to life. Yeah. And so for me, that relationship with God, as much as having my parents in my corner is huge, but there's times where my parents being in my corner wasn't enough. That relationship with God, when we talk about opening up, that relationship with God beyond religion, beyond tradition, beyond just going to church on Sundays, but that personal relationship with God and learning how to access his presence, which in his presence is peace. You know, he is our peace. He said he gives us a peace that passes all understanding, a peace that doesn't make sense to the circumstance, a peace that this world can't give. Yeah. He said, you will face trouble in this world, but you go, my peace I give to you, Jesus said. And he said, it's a peace that the world can't give you. And a lot of times in the escapism, we're looking for that peace. We're looking for stillness. We're looking for a break. We're looking, you know, and it's kind of a counterintuitive, but we were created for escapism. We're just escaping to the wrong place.
Wow. Can you break that down?
Yes. We were created to escape into the presence of God.
Wow.
Psalm 91, David, who was a warrior, but also someone who was very good at processing his emotions. And you can see through the Psalms that he wore his emotions on his sleeve. He said, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Yeah. And it's that secret place. It's an escape into the secret place of God's presence. Yeah. And in that place, it says there's, in the presence of God, there is fullness of joy. Yeah. At his right hand are pleasures forevermore. And it's a place that we have access to through the blood of Jesus, through what Jesus did for us on the cross, we can open our lives to God. We can receive Jesus as Lord, and we can have God's presence, access to the presence of God. I love what it says in Hebrews, where it says we can come boldly. When we understand this, we can come boldly into the throne room of grace, boldly, literally into God's presence. We can access His presence to receive mercy. So, the things we feel ashamed about, the things we feel guilty about, we can come boldly, even when we've messed up. God wants us to come boldly, even when we feel like we're not worthy, that we know the things we've done. Well, guess what? God knows all the things we've done. And He said to come boldly to receive mercy, and then to find grace to live the way He's called us to live. But also to live in that place of peace, to live in that place of joy, and to live with a sense of purpose. Because I think one of the biggest things when it comes to our mental health as men is having a sense of purpose and having an awareness of why we're here and what we're doing and what our days mean, and feeling a sense of fulfillment in the fact that I'm doing something that matters. And the center of purpose is in relationship with God. Because he's our creator, and a creator gives his creation design, and design always matches the purpose for which that thing was designed. So each one of us has a unique design. Each one of us has a unique fingerprint. And God's desire, his design for us, is that as unique as our fingerprint is, that we would leave our mark on this world, this generation, that's unique to us. So we don't have to compare ourselves to someone else, because Paul's never existed before. Paul will never exist again. You are unique in all of human history. Therefore, you have a unique voice. You have a unique cadence. You have a unique mark, a fingerprint, if you will, to leave on our generation. And that's why God has you doing this podcast, and there's a lot of podcasts out there, but there's never been another one done quite
like this. Exactly. This is the only podcast.
and the sooner we understand that there's an authenticity and a uniqueness to who we've been created to be. Someone said unique masculinity, I think. I think that was
I'm that someone.
Shameless plug right there. The sooner we start to settle into relations, like seeking after God, who will help us understand who He created us to be. Then it makes this life right now a lot simpler, because we don't have to compare ourselves to someone else. We just have to operate out of, okay, well, what did God put in my heart to do?
Exactly.
And just start walking that out, because that is purpose, and it's the purpose for which God created us for. That's where impact lies. That's where eternal impact, not just impact for a moment, eternal impact lies. That's where true fulfillment lies. And when we're talking mental health from the inside out, when you're walking in, you have a peace that you're in right relationship with God. When you know your identity, and you're accepted, that you're good enough in God's eyes, then what does any man's perspective matter at that point?
Exactly.
And then when you know that you have a purpose and that you're walking out that purpose, that's exciting.
Very exciting.
And fulfillment comes from the inside out, and it really washes a lot of the insecurities, a lot of the fears and anxieties that kind of cramp us up from the mind and try and seep down into our spirit. From the spirit, almost like a fountain. The fountain flushes a lot of that stuff right out of us. So we don't have to overanalyze it. We just have to flush it.
Wow. Oh my God, Joel. What? You are on fire. You are on Holy Ghost fire right now. I'm telling you.
We got the groove, bro. We got the groove.
Wow, that's awesome. I love this. I love everything you said. It's so on point. And I feel like, first thing I really appreciate is the audacity you have to speak about these things, because many young men are not speaking from this lens. They are not having the courage to, first of all, walk the talk, practice, serve, do these things, and also like impact other people's life from this angle. You understand, right? And it's because, just like what you say, they are escaping to the wrong things. If they are to escape to the right things, just like David and other great men of God that the Bible keeps talking about, and one thing which we kind of found in common, even Jesus himself, the most unique, the only unique man in the world. We are following his footsteps. He gave us the blueprint and we're following his footsteps. He escaped a lot. He went to places that he just want to be alone, to pray, to recharge, to connect with God. And that's one thing. Even while growing up, I did a lot of escaping. I did. And honestly, I would say that's where I was started coming off this whole idea of unique masculinity, because I got bullied a lot. I got pushed aside. I was called different names, but something keeps stirring in my spirit that God is preparing me for something. And I'm going to take on this journey. I'm excited taking on this journey, no matter what it is. And I know that he's going to use me as a testimony. I look at you right now. You are a testimony, and you're here sharing this testimony. And I believe that not just men listening to this podcast, but even women can hear, and in their spirit has been awakened, right? Yes. In this new year, to make those positive moves, to make the right move, and also encourage men encouraging themselves and encouraging their fellow men to escape to the right things, which is the God path. Awesome. Yeah. What are some core principles? I know the main principle we just talked about, the God principle, right? What other principle do you think some men can start imbibing in their life in order for them to have a healthy mental health?
Honestly, there's some really practical ones that are huge, because again, like we were talking about, we're triune beings. So we really need to be aware of and honor our spirit, which we do through relationship with God, which we do through protecting what we're looking at, what we're listening to, our ear gate or our ear gate, our eye gate, like especially those things really affect the thoughts that come into our mind. And, we spoke of David. David didn't do a great job in that area. So although he was healthy at processing, he had some negative escapisms too. Let's be real.
Yeah.
And, I'm not perfect in those areas either. You know what I mean? I still have issues where I escape to the wrong places. And guess what? Instead of recharging you, it further depletes you.
Yeah.
The Bible says the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Well, he doesn't do the stealing, killing, destroying a lot of times. He brings temptation. We jump into sin, and the death that comes from sin. The Bible says sin is pleasurable for a season.
Yeah.
Well, we all live in Canada. We know how short a season can be. Summer's too short and winter's too long. But sin is pleasurable for a season, and then but it always brings destruction.
Yeah.
So it's like it leaves us depleted, it leaves us ashamed, it leaves us beat up, and it draws us out of purpose. And so in that way, our ear gate and our eye gate protecting. So that's spirit. Then soul, your mind, your will, and emotions. And it's interesting because there's things we can do, practically speaking, that seem like they're physical things, but they affect all three. So in the natural. So one thing a friend of mine shared with me that is a really cool example, I like to call it the mental health compass. Is, when you start to feel disoriented, or you start to feel out of sorts, maybe you're dealing with some anxiety or depression. It almost picture like you got lost in the woods, and, and you don't have any phone signal, so you can't use your GP, you can't use your Google Maps, to orient you as to which direction you're supposed to go, but you feel lost. You're in the middle of what you would have used to pull it out, or people may still do this in the wilderness sometimes, is a compass.
Yeah.
Right? And a compass helps orient you to where you are and helps you understand where you need to go then.
Exactly.
Right? And so to help us orient us, sometimes when we're feeling lost, we're feeling depressed, we're feeling discouraged, we're feeling out of sorts in life, like everything's slipping away, and you start to feel that stress. One of the best things to do is first orient yourself with the mental health compass, which is north, south, east, west. It's an acronym. So north is nutrition. How is your nutrition? Are you eating a lot of sugar? Are you eating crappy food? Are you, because guess what? Eating a whole bunch of junk food can mess with your mental health.
Yeah. Very true.
So if your diet's off, there's a very good chance that your mental health will be off. And one of the keys, is start, if you get on a good regimen, eating clean and drinking a lot of water, it can actually help supplement your mental health.
Wow. Yeah.
So nutrition. So basically, just again, orient yourself quickly. North, south, east, west. North, nutrition. We'll go south, north, south. Sleep. Sleep is probably one of the biggest things for mental health. I remember someone had told me if there's actually been cases where people did crazy stuff, but they got a temporary psychotic relief from the judge, because they had been without sleep for like 72 hours.
Wow.
It's like so sleep deprivation can drastically affect your mental health.
Wow.
And I mean, again, any of us know that, if we've ever tried to stay up more than 24 hours in a row, it's like, let alone just the simple levels. You look at people, that phrase, hangry, what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, and that has to do with food, but also if someone's sleep deprived, immediately one of the ways that often affects us is we more easily get stressed.
Exactly.
We're more jumpy. We're more grouchy. We're more angry. And it's like we don't have the ability to handle the ups and downs of life the same way. Well, that's just the starting point, right?
Yeah.
What if you go weeks on end with deprived sleep? It can literally cause a mental health breakdown.
Yeah.
So when the first thing is to check nutrition, sleep, north, south, east, exercise.
Wow.
I'll tell you, when I'd had a number of years ago, I'd had another kind of lapse in my mental health where it was like, I wasn't coping very well in that season. And I'd sort of had a couple of circumstances come up in life that hit me, and I fell back into an old pattern in my mind, and I was having a hard time getting out of it, where I was like, it was one of those areas where I was really struggling with my mental health, almost on a mental health breakdown level. Yeah. And one of the biggest keys in that season, I still had relationship with God going, and I was still doing prayer walks and stuff like that. But I got back to a regular exercise routine.
Yeah.
And that helps get your body into that process where you have the dopamine release through exercise. And when you have a desire for more healthy food when you're exercising, you need water. So you got the water going through your system. And you're just having, that cycle and that routine in your body actually has a direct impact on your mental health as well. So exercise is E. So nutrition, sleep, exercise, and then again, how's your water content? So W, west, water. And just simply starting with the coordinates of those four things, just looking quick. Okay, how's my nutrition? How's my sleep? How's my exercise? How's my water? And it's like just getting back or implementing something on that level gives you traction to sort of bring yourself back to a level of trying to get back on track. It also gives you small wins in your day. When you make a little list of, okay, what's some things I can control right now in my life to help treat myself properly, to help give my body and my mind what it needs to be able to be effective. And as soon as you start to knock those down, you go, okay, I got some wins under my belt.
Yeah.
And those wins are actually things that are giving me energy and putting me in a position to be successful.
Wow. Wow. This is solid. This is very solid. Like, okay, in 2022, we have the compass to navigate the road of complexity, challenges, and difficulties towards a healthy mental health place, right? Awesome. Yeah. This is very good. Most of the points you made mention aligns with there was this YouTube video I posted some time ago last year, which had to talk about love vote, like investing in yourself and all those things, right? Yeah, like how you can invest love into yourself as a man. Yes. And it just shows how these components are very healthy and also very important. And sometimes a lot of men take it for granted.
Yeah.
Even women too, a lot of people take it for granted. And this compass really, really helps. Last year, I saw a post on IG and it said, your ancestors survived the Ice Age while hunting giant tigers with sticks. And I got thinking about men these days, right? I started thinking, okay, we don't have giant tigers. We don't have sticks right now that we, hunting and all those things. Instead, we have our smartphones. Life is easy. We got flashy cars and, flashy life. But then there's this question that I've just been burning in my spirit. And I felt like you're the perfect person I can ask you. Like, do you think the life of a man these days is getting more complicated?
It's interesting. It's definitely, I would say it's definitely more complex. Even with the example you just shared, the needs and the dangers were very real, but it was a pretty simple life at the same time, right? It was hunt and be hunted, look to provide for your family for today, store up in the summer to survive the winter. Like it was a pretty straightforward, pretty linear life. And, today there's a lot of different aspects. So we have a lot of amenities, we have a lot of comforts, but we also have a lot of different things that we're juggling as men too. So it is kind of interesting because as much as we've got all these comforts, and again, sometimes those comforts can tend to make us weak as well, where we're not really pushing ourselves. We're not really putting ourselves in. Anybody who's been involved in sports growing up or physical training knows that as you put yourself up against a barrier or you push yourself outside your comfort zones, it actually expands you. It develops you.
Yeah.
Muscle. And it's the same way with us as men and us as human beings as we put ourselves up against challenges and overcome. There's a development that takes place in that. So.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. You made a statement. Comforts can make us weak, which I completely agree. I mean, especially when you see how comfortable life is right now. And I feel like that push is missing, which now brings us back to, do you think men are enjoying the comfort zone, or are they trying to, put themselves out there, but just not being able to win some of these battles? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it depends on the man. I think there's some men who are pushing themselves outside their comfort zones, and then there's others who aren't. I think we're also somewhat of a victim of the age, especially for millennials and down, just where there's been different things like video games where you can kind of escape into a reality that looks to give you challenges and give you a sense of reward, give you a sense of accomplishment. But in most cases, it's not a real life accomplishment. It's a virtual accomplishment. So sort of looking to kind of create a virtual challenge and accomplishment, a virtual sense of overcoming without actually overcoming anything. So
wow. I like
you know,
that.
which can kind of leave us in a tough spot, because then you come back to reality, and there's challenges, we're dealing with reality, and we may not be overcoming those. And so and it's not just video games. I don't want to pick on video games. There's many different escapes we can sort of escape into that aren't necessarily healthy, that the world's offering at a great clip right now. So
yeah, what you say is so much in line, honestly, with that word escape, that escapism. And I also can see that. So there's this book I was reading by Wild at Heart, exactly, Johnny Eldridge. Yes. Wild at Heart, right? Yeah.
John Eldridge, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that book has a lot of criticism, but looking through the filters and seeing what the writer really intend, I feel like that's a great book. And it really speaks a lot of things that man is from a natural point of view, which is we love challenges. And he even made mention about the whole video game, that his kids, they don't enjoy video games that aren't violent. And that's true. That's same thing with me too. Like, I mean, where all the I just want to take this down, and looking at it, it's more like there's a sense, there's a hunger for fighting obstacles and coming out victorious on the other side. And there's also this frustration that, say, a man feels when he's unable to win some of this realistic, in the real world, right? When he's unable to win the real battles because he hasn't been preparing himself for those things, right? And that now makes the man feel like he feels weak, he feels he's not proud of himself. So those things begin to affect their mental health, kind of, wherein they now start seeking more of escapism, right? And now let's look at it from a micro perspective to a macro perspective. So a man who is unable to work on his mental health, do you think it's also affecting the society, wherein, we have the shootings, we have the fightings, the broken homes, the suicide rates among men? Do you think there's a linkage between men's mental health and how society is kind of falling apart in certain areas? What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. Because again, men are a part and parcel of the building block of society, which is the family, right? So if you have strong men, then you'll have strong, capable fathers and husbands, which will help create and cultivate strong families, which create strong communities, which create a strong society, right? And if you break it down on the micro level of you have an individual breaks down, then that kind of short circuits that whole entire process.
I see.
So it definitely on that personal level, it has that ripple effect on our society.
I see. Yeah, I really like how you put it on that personal level. So it means that each man has a role to play in the society, either actively or passively. And I believe that everyone who's listening to this podcast right now, maybe one question that should be steaming in their head is, you as a man, how can you influence society positively? What are the steps you can take or make right now in order to cause that influence? Because the whole world is waiting for you. And that's why we're doing this podcast, right? I started the podcast. I invited you to come in and you answered the call. And not just that, you are also you also giving impact in the community through your work, which we'll be getting to later on in this episode. Awesome. All right. So there's this article I came across in the Canadian Mental Health Association, and I will just read a portion of it and I ask you about your thoughts, right? So it says, the greatest evidence of male vulnerability is in suicide statistics. Among Canadians of all age, 4 of every 5 suicides are male. In the UK, men are around 3 times more likely to kill themselves than women. In New South Wales, Australia, suicide has overtaken car accidents as the leading cause of death in male since 1991. That's the past 30 years. Yeah. Wow. What do you think about this statement?
It's concerning, inevitably, and the idea of the picture of vulnerability, for sure. I think part of it is just the whole idea that often the expectations that society has of them, or the picture that's painted of manhood, is not necessarily always clear. So.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at times in the past, especially, you'd have that macho bravado picture of men. And I think that still perpetuates to a large extent, where men aren't allowed to express how they feel and their emotions. Mm-hmm. And that compression or that suppression of that emotion is unhealthy and can lead to toxicity within, and cause a lot of mental health issues, which again comes out in forms of anger, comes out in hope deferred, which causes that hopelessness, which in many cases leads to that feeling of not wanting to live any longer. And so those extreme expressions often come from an unhealthy or an inability to process emotions in a healthy manner, to be able to express or share where you're at day to day. So that isolation and that suppression can lead to those more extreme circumstances, which again is as said, a very concerning stat and reality right now.
Yeah. And which still, it would make me think about the book again, that we made mention about. He said that he was giving different stories and instances about some boys who were just so bad in school and everything. And he made mention that the reason why they were doing those things is not because they're stubborn or crazy. They were seeking attention. He said they were trying to get attention and affection. You understand? Yeah. And the more parents were, maybe scolding them or beating them and all those things, it just made them keep suppressing that emotion. And what you say about men just suppressing their emotion, I feel like that is, of course, the societal worldview, the societal view. And even when we look at it in, say, some homes, probably parents aren't giving them that emotional space to be vulnerable, to speak up, and even in relationships too. I mean, even growing up, like for me, I've always been this one person who just loves expressing himself. And that ties back to my personality, INFJ. And I noticed that when I express myself, some people will say that's just so unmanly. A man has to keep his emotion. A man has to, but honestly, one reason why I healed was because I kept expressing myself. And now I want to ask you, because now we're going deeper into our own personal stories and experience, because I know some people listening, they might be wondering, like, does James Bond ever express his feeling? Does James Bond, I feel like, I don't know if you saw the new James Bond, No Time to Die. I mean, I saw the emotional aspect of James Bond in this one. I don't know if you saw it though.
I didn't see that one yet. I think I've seen all the other ones. Daniel Craig's last one, I think, is the latest.
Yeah,
I didn't have an opportunity to catch it yet though.
Man, the guy was a lover boy this time, man. Honestly, and to me, I really connected with that for real. As I felt like they really went ahead to touch the emotional component of even the hardest of all guy, you understand, right? Yeah. Joel, you've been such an ambassador of awesomeness, trust me. No, for real. I'm sure everyone listening to you, they're just like, man, this guy is on fire. Like, where can I find him? What does he do? And all those things. So yeah. Can you tell us about Inspiration Republic? What do you do and how do you go about the things you do?
So Inspiration Republic is an education and media company that I started with my good friend Jermaine Ransom a few years back. And we currently speak in schools across Canada. virtually presently on the topics of mental health and wellness, bullying, resiliency. We also have a presentation on anti-Black racism that we're doing in schools, and another presentation for Black History Month that focuses more on Black excellence and African Canadian historical figures. And so, yeah, we're building a tour. We're for the new year right now. We're in the midst of that, and looking to book hopefully about 100 schools on that tour.
Oh, wow.
Interest everywhere from Newfoundland to BC, Yellowknife and Fort McMurray.
Wow.
Shout out to my boy Mike McCoy up in Fort Mac. But
awesome.
we there as well. So as well as Quebec and Ontario, so on and so forth. Really hot in Alberta right now. Apparently, we got a lot of bookings in Alberta as well. So
awesome. And I know you said since now you guys are doing it virtually, I believe that people from outside of Canada are also like reaching out to you, right?
I mean, well, we don't have anybody from outside of Canada, but like the mental health talk obviously is universal. So we'd love to, if anybody's watching, has interest in possibly booking us from a school from the States or the West Indies, we'd love to tune in, or anywhere else in the world, really,
Exactly, right? Because now you global right now, trust me. And to everyone listening and watching, if you want to reach out to Joel, I'll put in his details are right on the screen and also in the description. So feel free to reach out to him. And honestly, we need as many people to reach out to powerful organizations like this that are genuine in their approach in influence and impact, because that's what they stand for and they really want to see a change. So let's support organizations like this, and also let's support conversations like this. So hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video to everyone in the face of the earth, because they need to hear this powerful conversation. And Joel, thank you so much for taking out time to grace us with your presence. We are richly blessed, and you started off the new year from a grand style. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Paul, thank you for having me. Really a pleasure to speak with you today.
Awesome. All right. So, hey guys, so we're going to be catching up in subsequent episode. I have plans of bringing in more people to come in and give you guys all the amazing insight from their life experiences to purpose to unique masculinity, and let's just have this nice conversation, because this is what we need now the most. So I wish you a powerful and awesome new year, and also a fantastic time. Take care and cheers.